Now that our clay is centered, we have to compress the clay down to the pottery wheel head. And this is going to create the foundation of the vessel that you're creating. By that I mean this is the bottom of your container. If you're turning a bowl, you want a narrow container. If you're turning a plate, or a narrow footprint. If you're turning a plate, you're going to want a much larger footprint. So you need to know what you're turning before you begin. From here, this is the very center point of my clay. A fun way of finding that is take your pointer finger, guide it towards the center by drawing a straight line. It creates a spiral. The very center of that spiral indicates the center of your clay. I then make a big L with my left hand for love. I take my bone here, I place it right on top. So if this was a pie chart, I'm going to have more clay down towards me at 6 o'clock than I will here at 1 o'clock. I then take my thumb of my other hand, I line it up over top of that and wrap my fingers around. I make a nice long spine with my body, and then I fold at the waist, collapsing the clay down to the wheel head, creating the footprint or the foundation for my vessel. From here, I'm ready to open my vessel. I'm then going to find the center once again by drawing a spiral, which is just a straight line from right to left to the middle of my clay. I take my pointer finger and I place it, pushing it straight down like so, to get the hole started. This opening is going to really give us the floor or the foundation thickness of our vessel, and we would like that to be about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 inch thick. Now that I'm ready to begin the drilling process, I'm going to place my left hand back here. My arm moved from the middle of my leg towards my hip bone, and my thumb comes straight up. The thumb here is more like a post, so it's going to allow me to use it. I'm pulling my thumb back as I push forward with my other thumb, but it allows me to stabilize my hand. From here, I set my finger down in to drill the hole further down. I'm going to turn my wheel off and use my pin tool then to check my depth of my floor. You do that just by stabbing until you hit the tray. Run your finger down to the floor and lift both tool and finger up at the same time, and that's a good 1/2 inch thickness for a floor. This is something I want so that later on I can demonstrate how to trim the floor of a vessel when your clay is leather hard. Now that I have my hole, I need to expand my floor so that then I can pull my walls up. Placing your elbow close to your hip bone once again, make a very stiff thumb. These fingers at this point don't have a job, they're just attached. Set your finger down inside and curl your fingertip back towards you, back towards 6 o'clock. Can you see how the floor is starting to open up? As this surface area begins to open up, I can add more fingers in. The more fingers I can put inside are important because one finger is not as stable as two. These act as a splint, and they are going to give you a stronger tool. Your goal should be, you'll see how my hand rolls forward. Your goal should be so that your second knuckle on your fingers are laying flat on the floor, like so. Now my floor needs to be compressed. I will drag my clay from the outside to the inside by drawing a spiral. That's going to help level the floor and also set the base. Setting the base is like buying insurance for your pottery. By that I mean, remember back in the spiraling where how I mentioned that the spiral is the strongest structure clay can be in. Well, the same is true with the floor of your vessel. You want to draw straight lines from the outside in, from the inside out, to help strengthen your base and set the floor. This will prevent future cracking that may occur during the drying and firing process. Okay, so now from here, I'm putting my hand inside so you can see this is like a tire. I want to compress this clay back down into the form. And I also want to make sure I get any moisture out of the floor. Water erodes clay, and it will do so on your pottery as well. So at this point, I'm going to use a lot less water than what I did in the beginning, and that's going to make sure that my clay doesn't collapse later on during the pulling process. Comb that back in, so it's going to start to look like a volcano shape. as we begin the pulling process and making the fat go from the floor up towards the sky and thinning out our walls, we want to make sure we maintain a cone shape or a volcano shape during this process. My foundation of the floor has a great deal more clay than the wall does. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to push that up and under, and it's going to deposit fat here because it has nowhere else to go. And then from here I'm going to begin my pull. Putting my left hand on the inside of the clay, my left thumb on the outside of the clay, and then I'm going to hold my sponge and my fingers next to this thumb. See how they're attached, once again stabilizing the tools that you're going to be working with, which in this case are your hands. I'm going to gently apply pressure from the outside of the clay and resist with my finger on the inside of the clay. So this becomes a wall. This is how it looks. As the wall gets taller, my thumb can't reach all the way down here. I then rest it on my other hand, anchoring or stabilizing my body. You'll notice that my left elbow is up off my leg and my right elbow is close to my hip bone. And my upper body is tipped so that I can see what I'm doing as I pull the clay up towards the sky. Now, some characteristics I want you to be aware of as you're pulling your clay up towards the sky is that you're keeping a nice steady speed and allowing your clay to rotate around several times before you climb up. Your lines should look parallel or straight to the earth. They're really like a slinky. So a slinky is like a big long spiral when you stretch it out, but when you compress a slinky, it looks like the little rings are horizontal, and that's what we're creating here, and that's the look that I want you to go for. An indication that you're moving too fast on your clay is if your spiral looks like this and there's too much space in between your pull. So keeping a nice steady pull. Now that your clay walls are pulled, then you get to do some wet trimming. Wet trimming involves wood tools. We have knives. That are the most common. You always want to make sure that you get your tool wet so that the dry wood doesn't stick to your clay when you go to apply it. The first way that I remove clay from the bottom of my pot is I hold the tool as if it's a pencil with the blade facing the container. I'm going to angle it down until I hear the swish of the wood knife hitting the bat, and then I flip it upside down so my hand is over top of the tool, and I angle it out so that I can remove any extra clay. That's going to save me time later on when I go to do the trimming process. I have a little foot. Okay. So then the next step would be to form or shape my bowl. To form and shape my bowl, I can use my hands or I can use a rib, and I'm going to employ both methods. At this point, now that my form is stretched out, I slow the wheel speed down dramatically. So I'm returning to my slow speed that I started with the pottery turning process. From here, I can place my left hand on the inside and my right hand on the outside, and I just lean my body over to the right, using my weight of my body to help stretch the diameter of my bowl open. I then compress my lip by making a little lobster claw and pressing my finger flat like that. I do that every time I change the shape of my pot so that I can make sure that I have a very nice strong lip or finished part of my bowl shape. Now, ribs come in all sorts of different shapes and materials. We have plastic, metal, and wood materials, and the rib is designed to allow you to get very beautiful proportions within your shapes. In this case, I'm going to first use this wood tool on the inside of my vessel. I hold it here at the hole, which is the finger grip. I'm going to dial it down towards my leg to stretch out the shape. My right hand on the outside is really just a security. It's just guiding the clay up to the bowl shape. And the more I dial this down, the wider the bowl shape I have. So if I wanted to, I could leave my bowl vertical like so, or I could open up the diameter a little bit more, depending on what it is that I'm going to be serving in this container. So I'm just opening up that space by applying pressure to this area so it tilts towards my right leg, and I compress the lip. Now I think it's really important then to consider where the floor and the wall come together and what that connection or relationship is. And I like to create a little bit of an indentation by holding the back side of my wood knife, I call this the snowplow, on a slight angle, sculpting where the floor and the wall meet. And then I can use the back of the snowplow and draw a straight line if I'd like a spiral to appear in the bottom of my bowl. That was just purely decorative, not functional, but it looks nice. When glaze pulls up in the bottom of this bowl, it'll create a very appealing finish.